Hey, this is Michael Carter, lead pastor here at the Life Church, and I just want to thank you for watching this rebroadcast of this week's message. We hope it's in some way an inspiration to you and that there will be things that you can apply to your own life to help you along your journey. I'm really glad that you're wanting to grow in your relationship with Jesus, and I believe the Word of God will help you do just that. So be encouraged, and if there's something in the message that helps you or rings true with you, we'd like you to respond. You can leave a question or a comment or even a prayer request in the comments below. I'm praying for you, and I hope you have an amazing week. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about shared love and what that means. Shared love means to treasure what you've received from Jesus and to make purposeful decisions to live like Jesus, purposeful decisions, come on, and give all. How much is left out of all? Nothing, right? To give all of what he's given to you to others for their benefit. To treasure what you've received from Jesus. You've received his word. So when you don't live by his word, you're not treasuring it. All of his word. When Jesus says you are more than a conqueror and you're not conquering, then you have to ask yourself, am I treasuring his word? I'm not throwing shade or bringing condemnation. I'm just telling us we have to be introspective with this thing. If I'm not conquering my flesh, if I'm not conquering my sin, if I'm not conquering, then do I really treasure the word where God said you are more than a conqueror? Am I treasuring that? It means to treasure what you've received from Jesus. I've received a tremendous amount of grace. I can't even explain it. The amount of grace that I've received from God. And that's the favor. I mean, talking about forgiveness yet. You think grace, I'm talking about mercy. I'm talking about grace. I'm talking about favor. I'm talking about doors that were open. I didn't even know the door was there and the door opened. Oh, I didn't even know that door was there. And I go through it. Come on, I'm talking about favor that God has put on my life and your life. And forget about the mercy. The mercy, come on. God has given us so much mercy. So what does this mean? This says to treasure what you've received, make purposeful decisions to live like Jesus, and to give all of what he's given to you to others for their benefit. For their benefit. I've shared it many times. All of us would have a definition. If I would say, what does love mean to you? What does love? And I know the Greeks have several words and phrases for love, right, to try to explain it. So all of us also would have a definition of love. If I would say, what does it mean for you to love your wife or to love your husband or love your mom or dad or your son or your sister or the church or people or basketball, or what does it mean, right? And you would have a definition of that. All of us would have that, and they probably would all be right. My definition of love is to the giving of oneself at the expense of oneself for the benefit of another. The giving of oneself at the expense of oneself for the benefit of another. That's what I see when I see the love of Jesus. I want you to look with me just for a moment in Luke chapter 10. I want to go over real quick a very familiar story. It is the story of the Good Samaritan. You've heard that story before. We've heard of the Good Samaritan. And so I just want to read through that story and talk about what Jesus wants us to do based on this story. All right? Luke chapter 10, verse 29 says this. And by the way, for context, this is right after, Jesus was talking to someone and he said, love your neighbor as yourself. Right? We've heard that. Love the Lord. He said, what is it that you need to do? And the guy answered and said, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, good, that's excellent. And then the guy said, wait a minute, but who is my neighbor? And here's Jesus' answer. Luke chapter 10, verse 29. Watch this. It says, but he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem. Sound like your grandpa, don't it? Always telling a story. I just wanted to answer, Pops. And you got to go and tell me a story, right? So he said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, fell among thieves who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and then passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to him who fell among thieves? This is Jesus' question. And the man said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. In my flesh, when I look at people who are not churched, unchurched people, when I look at people like the man we saw in the prison who claimed to be a Satanist or a Wiccan or a Muslim who doesn't believe like me and talks bad about God. When I look at people who live immoral lives, what I consider immoral lives, lie, steal, cheat, pornography, sexual immorality, whatever, right? When I look and I see people like that in the flesh, I see that person as an immoral, right, no integrity, bad for society person who needs to be dealt with. God needs to bring some fire down from heaven and burn them up just enough so they don't die, because I know he died on the cross. But just enough so they don't die. Burn them real good. And then show them who you are, Lord. That's what my flesh would say. Because y'all getting on my nerves with all this. Y'all getting on my nerves. Right? And that's what I see. That's what I see as people. Because that's really what I've been trained to see. When Jesus looks at people who are immoral, sexual immorality, liars, thieves, stealing, cheating, bullies, filthy mouth, does he see them the same way that we do? See, I believe that Jesus still sees a person who is deceived by the enemy, a person who is being led astray, a person that he died on the cross for, a person that he took many blows. His flesh was ripped apart for the person who is in sexual immorality, who's a liar and a thief and has a filthy mouth. He shed his blood for that person. So he can't see them as inherently a bad person, not worthy of redemption. So then I had to look in the mirror and say, Lord, do I see people that way? Because there's something, my stomach turns. I'm just going to be honest with you. I can't be anything but honest, and I don't care what people have to say. I don't care. When I see LGBTQ, when I see 2 men kissing, there's something in my stomach that turns. Now, maybe a big part of that is the way I grew up. I don't know. I mean, it's just a kiss. Listen, 2 people who are not married and committing sexual immorality, same thing. Same thing, because God said that's fornication. A person who commits adultery, same thing. It's the same thing. But my stomach turns, right? And so how can I see like you see, Jesus? How can I see past? Because it is sin. Don't get me wrong. Now, don't think I'm trying to justify anything at all. That's sin, and it's abomination. Read Romans chapter 1. We don't have time to get into it today, but please read through Romans chapter 1 if you're confused about is it okay? Is it okay? Is sexual immorality okay? Read Romans chapter 1. I'm not making it up. I've fallen into a lot of things that are not okay. That are not okay. Now, I told you about the mercy of God. Still here because of his mercy. But how, if I'm going to share the love of Christ, how then can I see people the same way that Jesus does, to be able to see beyond their faults and see the need. Because that's what he has done for me. I mean, come on. And I know I'm not alone when I say this, but I won't call anybody else out. But if I put all of my sins up on the board, you say, oh, we need a new pastor. If I show you all the things I've thought about and done over the years, and I can say that with confidence because I know I'm not the only one. Okay? Come on now. Right? I mean, human beings, the mercy that God has shown on us. How can I see people the way that you see them, Lord? How can I do that without compromising? See, God never called us to compromise, saints. Never called you to compromise. Jesus was a master. We know that. But he was a master at not compromising who he was. I'm talking about when he walked the earth, not just as God, but when he walked the earth. He still never compromised who he was, even as a righteous man filled with the Holy Spirit. But he had compassion and empathy and salvation and redemption. How can we do that? What is it about shared love? Well, a few things. One thing I get from this story is the first thing is shared love. Shared love does not pass by the need. In verse 31, we see that the priest passed on the other side. He saw a need, and maybe like me, he was thinking, look at this. He's probably getting what he deserves, right? He probably stole something from somebody else, and now he's getting what he deserves. So he passed by the need. The Levite priest came and looked and then passed on the other side. Curious but uninvolved. Saw but ignored. Come on. And then passed by on the other side. Passers-by are people who could help but don't. They would help but didn't. Passers-by are people who see compassion based on worth and not on need. Is this person worth my time? Is this person worth my money? That's a passerby. Passers-by are coming down the road from Jerusalem. They already performed all of their duties at church. The priest was a person of scriptures, performed sacrifices, went deeper than most other religious people. But his role was reflecting the character of God. That's what his role was supposed to be. But instead he passed by on the other side. I read this story where some seminary students, they had this radio broadcast. And this one particular topic was the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan. And it was of interest to all of the other people that were in seminary. They said, now this is a good topic. We want to come and listen to this radio broadcast. So the professor said, I'm going to do something. He had a man fake a heart attack. True story. Had a man fake a heart attack on the sidewalk out in front of the building they were doing the radio broadcast in. And all the students passed by the man so that they could get to the radio broadcast about the Good Samaritan. Passers-by were caught up in a lifeless religion, a life of I see, but I won't do anything about it. And won't even ask God, what would you have me do about it? Shared love does not pass by the need. Shared love starts with you. You might be a person that says, well, what can I do? I mean, you're a pastor or a preacher. You do all these things, or these elders, and, you've been with the Lord all these years, and, but just who am I? I work at Catalent. That's what am I supposed to do? I work for Aldi. What can I do for people? In verse 33, it says, a certain Samaritan. Now you would know, many of you scholars out there would know that Samaritans are half Jewish and half Gentile. When they returned from the Babylonian captivity, they gave the Jews much grief and opposition about rebuilding. The Samaritan and Jews had a mutual hatred toward one another. You would know that. This is why the Samaritan woman at the well, back in John chapter 4, Why she asked Jesus, why would you give water to me? Why are you even talking to me? I'm a Samaritan. I'm a Samaritan. The Samaritan could have finished off the Jew, because Samaritans hate Jews. Could have seen him. He's down. He's half dead. Let me finish him off. But he didn't. This Samaritan was not religious. Come on now. Not a temple person. Not a Bible person. Not even supposed to do these kind of things. But this Samaritan was different. Shared love starts with you, the unlikely person. Because people who need to hear about Jesus need to see the love of Jesus. You can talk all day long, but if you don't show the love of Christ, it's not going to get through. And shared love starts with people where they are. Starts with people where they are. You can't say, well, listen, get yourself together. What if I, as a pastor, said, listen, you want to come to Life Church? Okay, that's good, fine. We accept everybody. Here's what I want you to do. Get yourself together. I want you to get off drugs. Go down there, and get off drugs. Get to rehab. Once you get yourself together and get cleaned up, come on in here. We will accept you, and you can sing songs with us and everything. By the way, you might need some clothes, all right? So here's some money for some clothes. Now you're presentable to come into church. No. No. Shared love starts with seeing and being moved by the needs, but shared love starts where people are. In verse 33, it says, he came to where he was. Starts where people are. To help people, you must move toward them to where they are and start from that point. It takes a concentrated effort, and it's usually not convenient. It's usually not, I know I'm speaking in the mirror. I know that. But it's usually not convenient. In fact, I can tell you, pretty near all the time is going to be when you had something else to do. I'm really busy. I really got to get this done. And now you want to call and talk to me about this thing? You want to meet me for coffee, or you want me to come over, or you want me to come pick you up? Or you want to talk to me about how you blew the money on a trip and now you need money for rent? I don't want to talk to you about that. Come on. But it starts with where people are. Shared love starts with seeing and being moved by the need. In verse 33, it also says that this Samaritan, when he saw him, he had compassion. My take is the Samaritan maybe had gone through some hard things himself. Maybe he had been beaten and robbed, mugged before. And maybe someone helped him or didn't help him. Maybe he learned from his own struggles and now he could sympathize and feel how others feel. Maybe. The Samaritan saw the man in need and was moved by what he saw. He could not pass by. He had to stop and get involved. Jesus was this way. In Matthew 9:36, it says, Jesus saw the multitudes and he was moved with compassion. It doesn't say he saw the multitudes and he had compassion on them. It says he saw the multitudes and he was moved with compassion. Jesus was moved with compassion. He comforts us in 1 Corinthians in all our troubles, so that we may be able to comfort those experiencing any trouble with the same comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. He comforts us so that we can comfort others. And then shared love starts with doing something about what you see. Do something about what you see. I don't know how many times I have been reminded of this. You're talking to someone and they say that they're going through something and they say, hey, listen, pray for me because, I'm having a surgery, or pray for me because of this, or pray for me because of my daughter, or pray for me. And then I say, yep, I will. Don't worry about it. You're on my prayer list. And then I see them 2 weeks later and they say, hey, my daughter came through all right. And I was like, oh, I was thinking. I was trying. Yes, that's very good. Didn't pray for him. pray for them. Pray for them right then. If you're able to. Sometimes you might not be able to. Maybe you're driving in the car, somebody rolls down the window and says, pray for me. Well, you can't, But if you're able to, pray for them right then. Do something about what you see. In verse 34, it says, he went to him. He bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine. He set him on his own animal. He brought him to an inn, and he took care of him. The Samaritan felt something so deeply that he was moved in his heart and his actions that he did something that took time, it took effort, it took involvement. This is the shared love life. Verb, actions, do it, life. Verb, that's what's happening. He went to him. He bandaged his wounds. He poured on oil and wine. He took care of him. That's what he did. And lastly, and probably most importantly, and what hits home with us, is that shared love costs something. Shared love, sharing the love of Jesus costs something. In verse 35, it says, on the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii. He took out some money. He gave them to the innkeeper, and he said, take care of him. And whatever more you spend, when I come again, I'll repay you. If this is not enough, I'll come back and give you more. Listen to me. This is the extra mile life. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, go the extra mile. It's scripture. It's not just a cliche. Go the extra mile. It's not just a cliche. It's scripture. This is the love Jesus lived by. Go further, the extra step, even when it costs you. The Samaritan paid for it all. He only lived love with feelings of love. And he lived love with actions of love. And he only lived love by doing something about what he saw. He only lived love. Come on. What does it cost? I will pay attitude. 1 John chapter 3 verse 17 says, but whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? This is the question John is asking. I'll say that to you again. It says, but whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? He says, my little children, let us not love in word or tongue, but in deed and in truth. Compassion costs something. You would know James chapter 2. Come on, you've heard it, even if you don't have it memorized. It says, if a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, go, be warm and filled, but you don't give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself without works is dead. We'll be talking about that next week. Faith without works is dead. You have to do something. You can't sit back and wait. Because God's sitting back waiting, and you sitting back waiting. We all sitting back waiting. In the meantime, nobody coming to the table saying, would you like some water? What would you like to eat? We all sitting back waiting. And so Jesus is compelling us this morning to live a life of shared love. The first thing we have to conquer is not Satan, folks. The first person we have to conquer is this flesh right here. Your old way of thinking. Maybe you grew up in church. Maybe you grew up in church thinking a certain thing. Maybe you grew up in church thinking that you're going to have to come up the rough side of the mountain. And Jesus is telling you this morning, no, I've already taken care of the rough side of the mountain. Don't worry about the rough side of the mountain. I want you to come up the way I came up. Come on. After I died on the cross and rose again. This is the life I want you to have. The enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that you, I know he said they might have more life, but he's talking to you that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And if you have that life, why would you not want to share it with others? I applaud those who have a revelation from God and share it with others. How can you have the love of God in you if you don't? That doesn't mean others are going to receive it. See, here's our issue. My issue, but our issue is we get our feelings hurt too easy. You know, you share love, you share the love of Christ with somebody and they don't receive it. And then you say, well, forget you then. You don't deserve it anyway. Guess what? Neither did you. And Jesus never said, well, forget you then to you. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be a placemat and people are going to run you over. That's not what that means. No, we're talking about the Lion of Judah here. Come on. We're not talking about, but what we're talking about is compassion and empathy and looking past the fault to the need. Shared love is for you to be used by Jesus, to be like Jesus, to share like Jesus, to love like Jesus. When you see it, your eyes are the birthplace of kindness. Come on, when you see the need, and you can't care until you know it's there. You can't care until you're aware, if we want to rhyme. So slow down and look around you. Stop, talk, feel, see people like Jesus does. And don't wait, don't delay, don't procrastinate on it. Do what you can at the moment. Seize the moment. Now is our time to live like Jesus and share his love. We'll leave you with this. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. In the NET version, Galatians 6, verse 10. Galatians 6, verse 10. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10 says this. It says, so then, whenever we have an opportunity, let us do good to all people. So then, whenever we have an opportunity, let us do good to all people. That's loving Jesus. Yes, it is. That's loving Jesus and transforming lives.